Okay. Hi guys, good afternoon. My apologies for the technical difficulties again, second week in a row. So we're still trying to improve our the way that we record things for live. So as time goes by, I can promise you that it will get better. So just to check, can anyone hear me? Uh,
No?
Wait lang. Ma'am, nawala na naman ako. Hello?
Ba't ka nawala?
Hello?
Are you connected?
Wait lang.
Nakalagay, go live ka eh.
Actually,
Andyan ka na eh, tapos nawala ka ulit?
hindi. Ano lang yung...
Walang sound, yun yung sabi niya. Baka naka-off
Yan.
ka.
Okay na. Hello? Hello? Can anyone hear me na? Okay, all good.
All good. Okay, yay! We're back.
Okay, yes, we're back. Yun, tuloy tayo. Okay. So, hi again, good afternoon. My name is Gian, and I'll be your host for today's coffee appreciation. So, what is coffee appreciation about? It's about appreciating the coffee that you have at your home. It's not about the known expensive coffees like Gesha or yung what they call this, the I forgot the name of the the animal that poops coffee. Parang it's not about those. It's
Civet.
about uh civet coffee. So it's about appreciating the coffee that you have. No matter the coffee beans that you have at your home, it can still go out delicious. Okay. So before we start making the drinks, we'll discuss first the different kinds of coffee beans that can be found here. So one is Arabica. So Arabica is actually known, excuse me, pas nilang dyan. It's actually known for its,
Okay, wait. Can
so,
I turn it around so I can see what you can see?
mm-mm.
Okay, turn it around. Yung camera, para I can see ano yung view ko sa'yo. Yung camera,
Okay.
nakabaliktad na?
Mm-mm. Kita ka na dun. Sorry.
Kita na. Ayan, very good. Sorry.
Okay. Okay, slight miscommunication again. Okay. So first is actually Arabica. So Arabica, it's known for its sweet flavor, and it's actually quite pricey sa market. So you can normally find Arabica beans sa coffee shops and in grocery stores. But in grocery stores, it's not about not saying that I'm not liking coffee beans that are selling from stores. It's just that I trust to buy coffee beans more in coffee shops because you don't know na how long it has been in the grocery store or kung kailan siya ni-roast. Maybe it's already been a year since niluto siya, 'di ba? Parang the flavors are already gone, it's gonna taste stale, it's gonna taste woody. So that's why I would recommend on buying in coffee shops more than going to the store. Okay, so next is Robusta. So Robusta is known for its strong and bold flavor. And these are normally available in convenience stores and in grocery stores. Kasi ito yung lagi ginagamit for instant coffees like Nescafe, 3-in-1, Kirkland because it's very cheap and it's easy to produce. Next is Liberica and Excelsa. When I took my Barista 101 last year in February, it said actually it's the same. The difference is just the bean size. But Liberica is also known as Kapeng Barako, which is isa sa mga sikat na coffee beans natin here in the Philippines. So, paano nyo malalaman that the taste between the three? So, for Arabica, you'll notice na it's not all bitter. There's also sweetness, there's also acidity. You can taste all the three. Next is, okay, so we have questions from Feeling. Ano mas better na type ng coffee beans? Medium roast or dark roast? Para masabi ko for me talaga, that would really depend on your flavor preference. Kasi, for example, me myself, I really love fruity coffees or flavors na hindi talaga very common with coffee. So I would prefer brewing myself a light roasted coffee or even medium. If dark, that would depend, like if it's gonna produce like a rich dark chocolate flavor and caramel. And as long as I don't get that parang ashy taste, like from start to finish. Kasi there are some coffees that I experienced na overall ashy from start to finish. Okay, so next question. So we have okay, so may tanong kay Alon Kabuhat. Why po? Galing dun sa comment niya na kawawa din sa mga department stores. Kasi you never know kasi kung kailan siya dinala sa grocery store. And may times din na sometimes already been 5 months since after roasting, 6 months, or even years after roasting. So, ang nagyayari nun, when bago roast lang yung beans, paakit pa lang siya sa peak na tinatawag. Then, once na umabot na siya sa peak na yun, diba halos lahat naman, once you reach your peak, magde-decline ka pa konti-konti pa baba. Same thing with coffee. When you decline, the flavors go less and less as time goes by. So, if it's, for example, a year na siya since ni-roast, it's still drinkable, but you may taste like staliness, woodiness, and sometimes even other weird flavors na pwede mo matikman like Band-Aid or really earthy, woody kind of flavor, something like that. Okay, so that's my opinions about buying coffees from grocery stores. But if you want to buy coffees from grocery stores, it's still okay. At least you're still able to drink a cup of coffee. Because nowadays, diba, coffees are getting more and more expensive. So it's lucky for those people na who were able to buy delicious coffees from other coffee shops. Okay. So, resuming back, so Robusta is more strong and bold. So normally when I drink a coffee from Robusta, I normally taste burnt popcorn kernel. It's like those when you eat a popcorn and then you eat the bone that's inside in a popcorn. But I normally taste that, and there's also like dark chocolate and then earthy kind of flavor. Now, lastly is Barako. Barako is a very distinct flavor when you're drinking Barako. Kasi most of the time, whenever I drink Barako, I normally taste jackfruit in Barako, or durian, or langka. So if you ever tasted that kind of fruit in Philippine coffee, that means it's either Barako or a really strong coffee that has a little bit of fruitiness as well. Okay, so we're gonna make some drinks now. So the coffee I'll be using for today's coffee appreciation class is actually one of Henry and Sons products. This is coffee from Itogon, from the Bathala series Meet the Farmers. So this is from the farmer named Lilia. Yeah, it's from Lilia. So it's a Typica variety, and the process is nitro natural. So natural produces more fruity flavor of coffee. When I tried this coffee so far, it's actually a very delicious coffee. It's one of my favorites so far out of the Bathala series. Okay. So which is better, drip coffee or pour over from Ray? Okay. So I'm not sure what do you mean by drip, like coffee maker, or kasi it's almost the same. Kasi when you say drip, you're using a kettle over parang a filter, di ba? So for coffee maker, I would recommend like brewing your own coffee, because in coffee maker, when they're brewing inside in a coffee maker, the flow is continuous. It doesn't stop like what other baristas did. Parang, for example, at start, we pour the water until all of it gets wet, and then we bloom it for 30 seconds, giving the coffee time to bloom. So something like that. Coffee maker po sa drip. Okay. So for me, I would recommend just doing a pour over than doing a sa coffee maker. But doing a pour over is much more tiring than doing in a coffee maker, because in a coffee maker you can just put the coffee in the coffee maker and then just let it brew and just wait until all of the water empties from the back part of the coffee maker. While for pour over, it takes about 2 to 3 minutes to brew one. And at the same time, it's much more, you have to put much more effort in brewing, because you have to control your water flow, the temperature of your water, you have to monitor it, and at the same time, the how much coffee that you've been putting. So we'll do that actually right now. So now let's make some drinks. So I'll be making an espresso first because it's actually one of the basic drinks that you can make in a coffee shop. So an espresso is a base ingredient for all of the drinks that you find in a coffee shop. Like for example, lattes, cappuccinos, flat whites, mochas. The base ingredient of those kinds of drinks are actually espresso. So again, I'll be using this coffee from Itogon, from the Bathala series, Meet the Farmers. So again, as I said last time, when you're making an espresso,
Hi guys, we're live today.
make sure na you don't forget the 4 steps. Like, for example, first is grinding. Next is dosage, meaning how much coffee that you're putting in the portafilter. And then lastly, the next is distribution, meaning distributing the coffee on the portafilter and make sure that it's completely flat. And then lastly is stamping. So again, grinding, dosage, distributing, and tamping. Once you remember all of those steps, you can make your espressos no problem. But most of the time, I notice na, yes, you know the 4 steps, but putting the portafilter inside an espresso machine tends to be a problem to some people. Kasi there most of the time na hindi siya nakalock na mabuti, and nahuhulog na lang yung portafilter sa shot glasses nyo. So para di mangyari yun, always make sure na all in siya, and then back mo siya papunta sa pipe nyo. So that's from 7 o'clock, then to 5 o'clock. So you notice I'm using a scale. Because using a scale helps to build more consistency with my shots. Not only just because na for show, but I really want to ensure consistency with my shots or my brews. Okay. So what you see, what's happening there is what you call channeling. So channeling normally happens when you made something wrong with the preparations of your espresso. Like did you dose too much? Did you distribute it unevenly or even tamp unevenly? So always when you're using espresso machine, clean, brew, clean. That's what you only have to remember. Clean, brew, clean. Okay. So while drinking the espresso, let's see if you have questions. Okay. Okay, so from Henry Sumeran, which beans are you using? I'm using Arabica from Itogon. So this is more a fruity kind of coffee. Okay, next. Yes, it's a local coffee bean grown in Itogon. It's not far from Baguio. It's part of Atok Benguet actually. That's been recently discovered last year 2019 by Sir Michael Harris. during when he's preparing for his national competition on 2019. Then he actually used this coffee for his signature drink on the World Barista Championship in the US in 2019. So from feeling, hi. So your question is how many grams of coffee is needed for one shot of espresso? So that would depend on the basket. Kasi it's not a standard type of basket that you normally see in coffee shops. But for this one, I'm using 15 grams to 16 grams. Then I pull my shot up until to 30. So before that, so let's give this coffee a taste. Wow. So it starts off with a very juicy texture. And then with flavors like white grapes, green apple, peaches. Let's take the second sip. Honey, with a hit of caramel, and then it finishes off with Earl Grey. Overall, a very delicious cup of coffee. The texture is very juicy. There's actually a hint of wine, maybe because of the white grapes. And then the finish is pleasant and it's lingering. It's lingering is actually a good taste. Parang if it's like sandpaper, that means it's astringent. Parang it's parang maasim and then it dries in your palate. Parang that I would describe as astringent. So what would you do if your espresso shot is astringent? When you make your another shot, make sure to extract more. So the astringency lessens. If it's too harsh, that means your coffee is too fine or you put too much coffee. So what you can do is lessen your dosage or lessen your recipe. Okay, so now we'll learn about sensory. As I said earlier from the notes, some of you might get curious, like, how do you get those notes? How do you get flavors of green apple, white grapes, peaches on a cup of coffee that's actually supposed to be bitter? The answer is actually from how the coffee has been grown, from the farm to the roasting and to the barista, which is our job to extract the best out of every coffee that I encounter. The job of the roaster is to roast the coffee beans up to its fullest potential. And then the job of the farmers, which is the foundation of the coffee, is to take care of the coffee from the processing. So this is what I normally look at when you're doing sensory. Can anyone see it? Okay. So this is what you call a flavor wheel. So this helps with your sensory part. So normally what I do first is the inner part. This is very general. So this is what you can identify first if you're just starting to study about sensory. Then when you got it, how floral tastes like, how vegetal tastes like, or how fruity tastes like, then go to the next layer, which is a much more specific, as you can see. Then once you got that mastered, and then you can go out here, which is a specific name of a fruit, a spice, and so much more. Okay, so let's see if you have questions. From Noel Lava, what is the best coffee machine to start a business? Okay, for me, the best one of my favorite brands na hinawakan ko sa machines out of sa ibang coffee shops na puntahan ko is Astoria. Astoria is a great brand. You can buy Astoria from Henry & Sons. They have numbers of Astoria machines. Next is this is a bit pricey, so it's Black Eagle. So Black Eagle is what you can normally see in coffee shops like Starbucks Reserve. There is a Black Eagle machine there. Toby Estate, they have that machine also. What makes that machine so great is it's actually easy to use. And at the same time, you can separate the group heads towards your calibration para ma-enjoy the maximum flavor of the coffee. Okay. If I remember correctly, at the Institute for Coffee Excellence, they actually use this machine also when they're conducting their Barista 101 classes, Barista 102 classes, and so on. Okay, so next, which app of flavor wheel can you recommend? Okay, so for answer for Joanne Francis, actually I just searched it on Google. You can actually see this on Google. This is actually not complete kasi there's actually another flavor wheel. If you see it on the internet, there's actually another flavor wheel here. Which I call the defect wheel because those are the flavors that you are not supposed to taste when you're drinking coffee. So this is kasi a much more simpler and much more detailed flavor wheel. So I would recommend you to focus on this part first, then go for the defect wheel. So next is the texture, 'di ba? Earlier you noticed na I said the texture was very juicy. So on the side here is actually the how light or heavy is your texture. So, ang maganda rin din dito is you can actually see the specific parts na rin din. No matter if it's tea-like, juicy, smooth, creamy, velvety, and so much more. So, normally, I taste velvety texture in dark roasted coffees or medium roasted coffees. So, parang more on a chocolatey and nutty flavor, something like that, and so on and so on. Okay. So talking about sensory, diba? So there are two kinds kasi when you're describing coffee beans. One is blends, and the other is single origin. So what is the difference between the two? So single origin is you're only using one type of coffee. Like for example, a coffee from Brazil, Colombia, Ethiopia, and so much more. Blends, from the word, is you're mixing different kinds of origins from other countries. Like for example, Brazil, Colombia, Vietnam, mixing into one kind of coffee. So what makes blend so special is that if, for example, you want your Brazil to be a bit more fruity to balance off with the body and the sweetness of the Brazil. They can mix with something that is naturally fruity, like coffees from Ethiopia, Costa Rica, and so much more. Okay, so a question from Janice. How many sips are ideal with your espresso and how long should you finish it? Okay, 'di ba most of the time na when someone serves you an espresso, they would recommend you to drink it as fast as possible because as time goes by, the flavors goes bitter. Which is actually true, but there are times that it's not turning bitter, but it becomes more acidic, which is very common with dark roast. But the rarest thing is actually the coffees that goes sweeter as time goes by. Which coffees from Yemen, that is one of the first coffees that I tried that becomes sweeter as time goes by, and geishas. So that's why those kinds of coffees are quite expensive as your normal coffees that you see in coffee shops. But I would for numbers of sips maybe 2 to 3 because you're identifying the notes. So first sip, try to get as much as notes as you can. Then on the second sip, sometimes flavors changes. So from fruity, sometimes it can be more on sugar or texture, and then the last part is this is where you focus on the weight, the texture, and the finish of your coffee. Okay, so now we'll focus on brewing. Okay, so for brewers today, I have 3 brewers to show to you. So first is a V60. So this is a very common brewer that home brewers use at their own home. And it's also present in some other coffee shops. So the V60 looks like this. So it's a cone shape. And the reason why it's called V60, it's a letter V and a 16 degrees around. So the result of the drink that you can produce with this kind of brewer is medium body, medium acidity, medium sweetness, but with a cleaner texture. Cleaner mouthfeel, I mean. Okay, so let's try to brew with the V60. So the things that you're gonna need when brewing a V60. So of course the brewer itself. Next is a server. Next is a scale, and of course the gooseneck kettle, which this one right here. So most of my stuff I bought it in MK Kitchen, in department stores. But for the gooseneck kettle over here, I actually bought it from Henry and Sons because I really love how the flow rate of this kettle because you need sometimes when you brew you have to control your flow rate, which can really affect the flavors of the coffee. And the great thing about this kettle too is that you can enter your desired temperature. Okay, so how much yung kettle? Asked by Gian. So I actually bought this, if I remember correctly, this was between 15 to 20k. I'm not sure, but it's between those prices. Trust me. Whenever my friends come here, they were like, I don't wanna go here, I don't wanna touch the kettle, I might break it. They were like that reaction. Okay, so I'm using my Comandante grinder for today. This is one of the best grinders that you can buy if you're really wanting to learn more about coffee and exploring the sensory. Okay, so my recipe for here is I'm brewing 16 grams of my coffee and then brewing 240 grams out. So again, the great thing about this grinder is actually that it's actually a very flexible grinder. You can grind it for espresso, for pour overs, French press, and cold brew, so much more. If you're curious about how much is this hand grinder, I bought this for 11 to 15,000. I was lucky before that it was on sale, so that's the reason why I was able to buy it a much more cheaper price. And kung nasa bahay ka lang and natatamad ka mag-workout, this can be a wonderful workout for your muscles, diba? Flex, 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 diba? Hi!
Virginia.
So sorry. Hi Virginia, sorry, I was trying to read your name, sorry. Hi from Philippines. Thank you for watching. Wow, you have one from Netherlands. Okay. So this may take time, but you'll get used to it. You'll get used to the tiredness of grinding. But the great thing is once you tried your coffee, once you finish brewing, it's all worth it. Nila na pag-isipan niyo, pag napapagod na kayo, sabihin nila lang, it's all worth it in the end. It's all worth it in the end. Yun lang yun. Okay. So my kettle is still at 87 degrees Celsius. I'm waiting for it to go more on 97. Okay. So while we wait,
Ilang clicks po ang grind size for pour over?
oh, sorry, I forgot to mention that. Okay, if you have a Comandante grinder in your home, I'm using 28 clicks. I'm using 28 clicks for my recipe today. So I would recommend for this type of coffee, I would go between 28 to 30.
I think Elisa just joined us. She's asking, ano po ang gamit niyong beans?
Okay, I'm using a locally grown beans from Itogon, which is part of Atok Benguet. And it's just a city right after Baguio. The great thing about this coffee is actually is they were able to create something that is not very common with the flavors of locally grown coffee. Like for example, this coffee that I'm using has more of flavors of grapes, apples, peaches, which you normally find in origins like Costa Rica, Colombia, and so much more. That's why this what makes coffee so interesting. Like, you may never know which flavor would go out until you try them. So that's why I would really recommend if you're able to go to a coffee shop that has a various options of beans, please try them. Kasi you may never know na, di ba? Parang, wow, this coffee is good. Just imagine na lang when you're going in a coffee shop, imagine meeting a friend for a first time. Diba, normally the first impressions are quite judgmental, like, ang sungit naman nito, or ang snob naman nito tingnan, or parang aawayan ka, diba? It's always negative. Parang sa kape, unang tingin, mapait. Pero pag sinubukan mo na yung kape, or sinubukan mo kausapin yung tao, you'll see different characteristics. Like, for example, with coffee, more on sweetness, berries, fruitiness, spices, and so much more. So, same thing with people lang din. You'll see the sweet side of people, you'll see the bitter side of people, and their mahugot side, yung tipong napapasana all na lang sila. So, something like that.
So what's your favorite roast? Medium, dark, or light?
So, normally, I would go for a light and medium roast because I really love my coffee fruity, and I love the flavors of coffee that is not very common. Like, for example, berries, or tropical fruits, stone fruits. I really want the coffee na parang when I drink it, it's like, this is not coffee. Something like that. Okay, so I'll be starting brewing now. So I'll be brewing with a V60. So same thing with earlier. Distribute your coffee around so the coffee bed is flat. Okay. Okay, we'll start with the blooming stage of the coffee. So time. Okay. So we'll wait for the first 30 seconds. Now this is where it started to release all of the flavors of the coffee. So if the coffee is freshly roasted, this is what normally happens. Parang it blooms. It actually rises up. It looks like a brownie that is like a chocolate cupcake that is baking in an oven. So it grows up and up and up. Then because of the gas actually. Now next, I'll be pouring up until I reached 140 ml, half of the recipe. Actually, from Alisa. I really love coffees from Zagada as well. Actually, there was one time that my friend was able to buy Sagada coffee from Baguio that he purchased at Palengke. I was surprised the flavor that it has to offer. Like, there's blackberries, there's tea. It's actually quite fruity. It's very sweet. That's why I really love Sagada coffees as well. Okay, so it reached up until 240. So now, we just have to wait up until all of this goes down, up until the mark of minimum of 2 minutes and then maximum of 3 minutes. If it goes beyond that, you have to remove the brewer from the vessel because that means it's already over extracting the coffee. So that would really affect the whole quality of your brew. Okay. Okay. So for a question from Judy is bakit hindi
Pour
lang
the
binubuhos?
water. Straight.
Kasi when you're just pouring water straight, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna over agitate all the coffee. So what's gonna happen is that it's gonna be all bitter. Or yung katulad ginagawa sa coffee maker, the flavor is going to be one-dimensional lang. So kaya kung napapansinin mo sa ibang coffee shops, di ba? Parang ang sarap nila gumawa ng kape if you ever tried sa pour over in coffee shops. Kasi they were able to adjust the flavors. Like for example, the first pour nila, mabagal lang. Then tapos mamaya bibilis, tapos mabagal. That also affects the flavors as well. So,
Ano po, ratio ng beans to water?
okay, so normally I use 1
Ratio,
to...
sorry.
For ratios, I normally use 1:15 or 1:16. Pero that will still depend on the flavors na it can produce. Kasi for example, there are times na it's very acidic on 1:15 and 1:16. So you can maximize your recipe pa up until na balance mo na yon. And if it's too harsh or too bitter, then you have to lessen the recipe. Meron din ako i-recommend yan. Meron din ako nakita or shinare sa akin ng friend ko nung college ko. This is called the brewed coffee compass. So as you can see here, you look here at first. So kung ano yung natikim nyo, pumasok dito, that means okay yung brew nyo. Then pag lumabas siya dito sa gilid, that means you have to adjust something. And yung kagandahan dito, kunwari, may natikim ka dito sa side na to. So what you do is, pupunta ka dito sa kabilang side na to, and then you look kung ano yung pwede mong gawin to adjust your recipe. And nakalagay na rin dito sa baba kung ano yung meaning ng more extraction, less extraction, more coffee, less coffee. So ito yung ginagamit ko before when I was in college.
If they want that, they can just ask us via messenger and we will send it to them.
Yes. If you want to have the picture of this one in the complete flavor wheel, just give us a DM. And I have no problem sending it to you guys. Okay. So, let's try the coffee. Okay.
Joanne says, yay.
Yay, yay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we'll try this coffee. So, from the aroma, you can already smell na it's gonna be sweet. And then, there's also like guava. There's also black tea. There's also grapes, which is present earlier in the espresso. So, diba, as you notice na I'm not drinking my coffee instantly because the temperature of the water that I use is too hot, like 97 degrees Celsius. So, it's almost at boiling point. If you're drinking your coffee too hot, the flavors are not gonna be there yet because it's still hidden pa. And what makes it worse pa, if you drink your coffee too hot, it's gonna numb your palate. And what's gonna happen is that once it's cooled down, you cannot taste, or you may have a hard time tasting some flavors as well. Okay, so...
Say hi to Sir Mark.
Hi Sir Mark! Magandang hapon po. Matagal na po akong gwapo. Joke. Okay. So let's give it a taste. So for pour over coffees, the difference between this and drinking an American or long black is this one is gonna be more cleaner and it's gonna be more lighter in texture compared to Americanos and long blacks because it's not an espresso based coffee. Okay, so again, I'm using the recipe of 16 grams of coffee and then 240 ml of water. So maybe in measurements, that's 1 tablespoon in conversion of measurements, and 1 cup of water. Okay, so let's give this coffee a taste. So it starts off with a tea-like body, like Earl Grey. Then comes in the fruitiness of the coffee, like white grapes, with a winey texture, and then it finishes off with guava. Guava. So the tip lang of doing sensory is never mind what other people might say. Like, I'm not tasting this, I'm not tasting that. Just um, just be confident on that you're tasting this, because what makes it important is communication. Because there are times that other baristas might say na you may taste flavors of raspberry, then after that comes in cranberry, then mangoes, and so much more. Sometimes it can be confusing to some people who are just getting to know specialty coffee. So, for you to practice is that always be confident on what you're tasting. Because we have different palates. I cannot transfer my palate to you. Parang that's the logic of it. So if you want to learn more about sensory, is just keep trying and trying and trying until na nagigets mo na siya. So yun yung parang pinaka-logic niya.
What's the name of that drink?
So the name of this drink is just a simple pour over. Just a simple pour over. So, I really want to share na how I brew at home normally. So we can actually enjoy coffee with one another. Okay. So I'm a big fan of cappuccino, macchiato, Irish coffee. Wow. A total coffee lover. Okay. Actually, my favorite drink on other coffee shops, I normally drink black. Because I really want to enjoy the natural flavors of coffee. Because adding milk and sugar for me ruins the flavor a bit. That's why if I need to add milk or sugar to my drink, I just add just a teensy bit. But you can still try other drinks too. Okay. So para kayo ma-adjust nun, it's no problem for you to start with mocha kasi doon din ako nagsimula. I started on drinking mocha, then going to lattes, then lastly I went to black. So that means espresso, americano, and pour-overs, no matter the brewer. I'm saving this for later. Okay. So let's back that away. Okay. So, which brewer would you like to do next? We have the French press and the Aeropress. So I would do the Aeropress. I would do the French press first because this is one of the most common brewers that other people have, no matter if you're a home brewer or just people who just want their coffee in the morning. So I'll be adjusting my grind size again. But this time, let's try another coffee. Okay. So this is a coffee from Colombia. So Colombia is actually known for flavors like chocolate and complex nutty, which is very great when you're making drinks with milk and chocolate. So again, but I have to adjust the grind size. So the grind size that I used earlier was a grind size of 28. So now I have to adjust my grind size going up to 50. That's okay. So if this is your first time hearing the term clicks, that means when you're adjusting the grinder from Comandante, when you hear a click, that's one click. 2 clicks, 3 clicks, 4 clicks. So every time that you hear a click, that's how you count 1. Okay. So I'm using the same recipe of 16 grams. So later, after doing the brewing, I'll whip up a signature beverage to present to all of you. How coffee is not limited to just adding milk and chocolate. So you can try it at home. Yes, 16 from Joan Francis. I'm using 16 grams and 240 ml.
How many minutes pouring water on the pour over?
Okay, how many minutes? So you brew your pour over a total of 2 to 3 minutes. Okay. So the French press is, diba, as I said, is the most commonly used brewer to people. No matter if you're a home brewer or a person just like a cup of coffee naman. So what makes French presses great is it provides a full-bodied coffee and parang it gives you this texture na parang quite thick because of the immersion of the coffee with the water. So I'm ready.
Ninang Lisa says hi. You're so good daw.
Hi Nina Lisa, good afternoon. I'm glad you're enjoying this live session. Okay, so grinding is done. So next is so the French press. You don't need to parang pre-wet some stuff, but you may have an option to pre-warm your French press because when you're putting water to a room temp French press, it's gonna affect the temperature as well. So that's why I already set the temperature of my kettle to a flexible temperature for all of my brews. So putting 16 grams of my coffee on 50 clicks with grind size. Okay. So I also normally do blooming on the first part when I pour my water on the French press.
Elisa has a question. Grind size for French press, is it fine, medium, or coarse?
Normally for grind size, you go for coarse. But you may encounter some other videos then they're using medium grind size. But if you're just new to coffee, just go with the coarse grind size first because it's easier to brew a French press with a coarse grind size other than a medium. Because the thing about French press is if you're grinding it too fine, once you've pressed the plunger down, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna build pressure inside the French press, and then it might break the vessel itself. So and we don't want that, diba? So parang just to be safe, just use a coarse grind size and then just plunge it down after. You'll know na if it's too coarse or if it's too fine. If it's too coarse, what's gonna happen is that when you're pressing down the plunger, you're not gonna feel any resistance at all. So that means your grind size is too coarse. When it's too fine, what's gonna happen is that it's gonna really resist the plunger. And then when you plunge, you don't plunge like, diba, yung pipilitin mo talaga itulak pababa kasi there's pressure coming up eh. So it might break your French press. Okay. So this is gonna brew for up until 4 minutes. So let's see. So do you have any questions about from the session earlier? while we wait for this coffee to brew. Okay. So from Eugene, where did I get my apron? I actually won this in a competition at school. Uh, it's one of my happiest moments din kasi parang 'di ba, you're that adrenaline din na you're competing. It's quite different na when you're just practicing alone. Kasi you get to know other people, yung yung feeling na napapasaya ka kasi napapasaya mo din sila. Imbis na kinakaba sila, na-excite pa sila, something like that. Parang yun yung parang gusto ko sa competition eh. If you're curious what competition that is, it was a latte art competition. So, yeah. What's your top 3 picks on imported single origin of coffee? From Janice. Okay, so top 3 choices of imported. Number 1, Ethiopia. Favorite. Number 2, Yemen. Actually, I cannot pick between Yemen and Ethiopia because Yemen, what I like about Yemen is that it was able to, I was able to experience a flavor sa Yemen na I haven't experienced in other coffees before. So, yes, Yemen, no doubt, number 2. If you're curious what flavors that I was able to experience is flavors like Coke, perfume, floral, it's quite different. And then the amazing thing is also is as it cools down, it actually goes sweeter, which is very rare sa coffee and other single origin. Kasi if you brew in Ethiopia and then it cools down, well, it tends to be acidic. But for Yemen, it actually goes sweeter. And last 3 is Costa Rica. One of my favorites to brew and then to buy from other coffee shops. What I like about Costa Rica is the texture and the versatility of flavors. Because I noticed that whenever I bought coffees from Costa Rica, it's either more on sugary flavors like brown sugar, caramel, nuts, and chocolate, which is very comforting and at the same time, what do you call this? Stress relieving. And then there are sometimes na sobrang fruity and it's very refreshing. Parang yun yung lagi ko hinahanap sa coffee, something versatile. Ethiopia can be versatile too, but it has to take some adjustments din para magkaroon ng body. That's for me one of the negative things about coffees from Ethiopia. It really lacks on body. Okay, so next, ano tayo mga question?
What milk do you use for your lattes, cappuccinos, and mocha?
I normally use Harvey Fresh kasi for me, I really love the flavors of Harvey Fresh with coffee. But now I have Milk Magic here at my ref at the moment. It's also good, but you just have to adjust on how you steam it para makuha mo pa rin yung same texture as other milks then. If you want to try other milks, try to buy something that is ultra pasteurized or ultra homogenized. It provides a much more sweeter and creamier mouthfeel then. So you can buy those in grocery stores. Ang itsura nun, parang maliit lang siya na box. Matangkad siya na box, tapos kulay green yung parang ilalim niya na Yun yung isa sa mga pwede mo mabilin. Next, if you have a SNR membership card, you can buy a brand of milk called California Sunrise, which you can buy it at 240 pesos if I remember it correctly for 2 liters. So that for me is one of the best pairings sa coffee that I ever had before.
Are you familiar with Vietnamese traditional coffee using coffee fin? From Henry.
I'm not sure on about the way how traditional Vietnamese coffee is prepared. Parang that small brewer that you use on Vietnamese coffee. But
We'll try to research
about it.
Answer it next week.
Yeah, we'll answer it next week. Okay, since it's already been 6 minutes, so it's time to plunge. So as you plunge, you don't have to really rush to press it down. Ayan. Hanggang dyan na. And then you can pour your cup of coffee and enjoy it. So let's give it a taste. And I'm getting my cups. Okay. So the negative thing is for French press is that whenever it's served, sometimes the grind size tends to be on the cup as well. Parang giving that parang sandy feeling sa mouth mo and it's not pleasant. Kaya minsan na ginagawa nila, they strain it para hindi sumama din yung yung coffee grounds. So let's give this French press recipe a taste. The roasting level of this Colombe is actually much more developed than the one that I used. So this one is a bit darker. So I can expect that there's gonna be more body than the acidity and sweetness. But I'm tasting more like dark chocolate, like melted dark chocolate. Then next, like roasted nuts, like almonds. Yeah, only almonds. Dark chocolate, roasted almonds, and then it finishes with caramel, burnt caramel. Okay, so if you're curious on why am I slurping, is that when you slurp, the liquid spreads around the palate, resulting parang nagbabali ng temperature niya. So you can get all of the flavors when you're slurping your coffee. It's like it's like when you're eating ramen, diba? You hear Japanese people like slurping whenever they eat ramen. That's one purpose of it. Okay.
Is there a difference at taste when you stir it before pressing the plunger down?
Yes, there's a difference when you're stirring because when you're stirring, it causes agitation, so it's gonna extract faster, resulting a more body towards the coffee. The reason why lang that I didn't stir with my French press earlier because the temp of my water is already high enough, so I'm not gonna need it to stir. The water itself na already provides enough extraction power for me to bring out more body towards this coffee.
Okay.
Okay, so lastly, the Aeropress. So this is an Aeropress, which I bought for at least 2,500 pesos. But it already comes with this neat looking stand with many filters. This is maybe 350 pieces of filters. And then the brewer itself, the plunger, and then the stirrer. So the great thing about Aeropress is, as I said, is one of the most versatile brewer because there are many ways to brew with an Aeropress. So for today, I'll be showing you how to brew the traditional way because, diba, if you're encountering something new, you don't do the advanced levels agad. You learn the basics first. Then once you learn the basics, then you can try experimenting with other brewing techniques and other experiments. Okay. So for today, this time, I'll be brewing with this kind of coffee. This coffee is from Costa Rica, which I brought from a friend of mine. This coffee actually offers more like grape flavors, red wine, and like dried longan flavor.
Okay. There's a question. What water temp did you use for pour over and French press?
I actually used 97 degrees for
Henry Sumeran got it right.
Yeah. Nice job. Thank you.
Thank you also, Janice. Okay, there's a question from Rico Velasco. What can you say about the Wakako press?
Honestly po, Rico Velasco, I haven't heard that press up until now. So, I normally stick with the brewers na that are very common sa industry. So let me give it a check. Okay. It's like an espresso.
It's an instant.
It's an instant espresso, portable espresso. Okay.
We haven't tried that. But
We haven't tried that yet, pero I've seen one na. So, the great thing about that one is parang if you don't have an espresso machine, you can use that. But it's not gonna provide as the same quality na flavor as the machine gives. Kasi the machine gives the pressure for you. Parang, if you're doing it manually, imagine doing the same pressure of you making the espresso as the pressure that the machine is giving. It's gonna be very tiring. And at the same time, it's not gonna be the same then. Kasi if you kept, what do you call this, switching pressures, it's gonna really affect your coffee. So, thank you, didn't hear that. Okay. Diba? Nakakatulong mag-workout para gano'n ka, maghawak ka lang ng komandante. Diba, you don't have to go out, you don't have to lift weights, all you have to do just grind. Tapos kung saan na lumalaki, oh. Ayun.
Do you agree on not using boiling temp water when brewing and why?
Okay.
It's from Jamie T.
Actually, I agree on using boiling temp water if you're brewing with a light roasted coffee, because light roasted coffee needs a lot more extraction power. Because, diba, as I said earlier, when a light roasted coffee tends to be acidic in flavor, so you need more water and a higher temperature for the acidity to go down. So I would use a boiling temp water when you're dealing with light roasted coffees, and I would dealing with temp like 89 degrees Celsius when you're doing with dark roasted coffees. Para po kay Tito Rico, special mention po. Hello. Yan, special mention na yan. Pa-shoutout po. Okay.
Thank you for watching.
Thank you for watching. Okay. Okay, I already placed a filter inside. So this is how a filter looks like. It's like a round piece of paper. So, diba, if you attended the Barista 101 seminar last week, diba, parang someone asked if you can make an espresso with an Aeropress, you can. But you have to buy that particular equipment to make an espresso. It's called Prismo, which is a type of equipment you can put under here, and then it has a metal filter provided so that parang all of the flavors of the coffee will definitely go through. And at the same time, it gives a decent amount of pressure for the coffee to go through. Okay, so same thing with the V60 and the French press. I normally start with the blue. So, let's start. Okay, so the blooming stage, you can increase that, for example, from 30 to 40 seconds if you're doing a pour over ice, because most of the time it tends to be watery if you're doing the same thing as you're doing hot. So make sure you extract more. And normally you have the recipe when you're doing pour over ice. So next thing is the way that you can adjust your your blooming time is the roasting day of the coffee. There are times kasi na it's been roasted too long. So what happens is that the water goes through to the coffee very easily. So what's gonna happen is that it's not gonna extract enough. para mapalabas yung lasa. So you shorten the blooming time. So this is where I agitate the coffee at least 4 to 5 times. Then, lastly, I'll press. You press it slowly. Don't press it so fast. What's gonna happen is that the plunger is just gonna fall down, resulting a mess on your brew station. So when you hear that parang hiss of air, that means wala nang laman yung nasa loob ng brewer mo. So, move that. Swirl. Oops. Kasi masyado pa siya mainit. Okay. So, let me get a glass. So, for pour over from Ronello Villanueva. Ano po yung question niya po sa pour over?
Tama ba na boiling water gamitin ko? Then, bawasan ko grams ng coffee grounds at i-adjust grind size. Yun yung Ronello. For pour over po yung question na yun.
Okay. So, sa boiling water, normally you use that for light roasted coffees kasi nga it tends to be acidic when you're boiling your water too low. So what's gonna happen is that it might taste like vinegar, parang if it doesn't have enough temperature. Okay. When you're dealing with dark roasted coffees, I normally bring down the temp because since they already, diba, cook up to their limit, so adding more temperature, it's gonna overcook the beans. So what's gonna happen is that I may get flavors of ashy, then second notes of ashy with a texture of ashy, and then I finish off with ashy, parang something like that. And I don't want that with my cup, so that's why I normally bring down my temp.
Bakit sometimes pag brew, cloudy yung coffee, sometimes naman shiny?
Okay, so these are very great questions though. Kasi coffees that are cloudy, sometimes you can tell na tawag doon? Kung paano ginawa yung barista yung pagka-brew. Like for example, yung coffees that are shiny, normally parang sobrang fruity na niya. Like Gesha or coffees that are fruity. Yung parang kulay pula na yung kape, hindi na siya brown or black. Parang pag tinapat mo sa ilaw, it's more a reddish color. Although, coffees that are foggy, parang di ko pa na-encounter yun. Pero most of that time, if it's cloudy, parang nasama din yung grind size, yun yung dating sa akin ng cloudy. So, yun. Okay, so from Sir Mark Vasquez, I'm not using Akaya, I'm actually using a Brewista weighing scale, which I bought from Lazada. So, I love using Akaya, parang it's a very great weighing scale for both espressos and brewing. So my favorite scales to use are Akaya, Pearl, and and this scale of course. Okay, so since it's been cooled down, we can try this coffee from Costa Rica. Okay, so let's taste. So from the smell alone, I can already smell the flavors of grapes and dried longan. So dried longan is this fruit na color brown yung labas. Then yung pag pinutol mo yung balat, yung parang kulay puti. At first, I really thought it was rambutan kasi it really reminds me of the sweetness of rambutan. Then as I tasted it and then searched on Google, I was like, so this is longan. Okay. So let's taste. So yes, it starts off with the flavors of grapes and then basic. Then after that comes in dried longan, lychee, and then it finishes off with black tea. Very delicious coffee.
Okay. 16 grams of coffee is the standard for one serving.
from other coffee shops, they use 16 grams. Kasi parang, yung sa one cup, 204 grams. So that's why they normally use 16 grams or 15 grams. In other coffee shops, they use 20 grams. Na they brew it up until 300 grams. So people can enjoy more of the coffee other than parang yung a lesser cup. Kasi there are times, di ba, parang pag pupunta ka sa coffee shop, you normally look for quantity. So like, may times na may nagre-reklamo na sobrang liit naman yan, sobrang kulang naman yan, parang I need more. So that's why they normally brew it at a minimum of 300 ml. Okay. So next is I'll be doing a signature beverage. Just a treat for you guys. So let me fix my area first. Okay, so creating a signature beverage is actually quite easy. Once you know how to taste sensory with coffee, then you can try experimenting with coffee. So my challenge I really love challenging myself whenever I make signature beverages because we never know the limits of coffee, diba? Parang coffee is still limitless. You can do anything with coffee. So I challenge myself on making a signature beverage without using milk for coffee because most of the time I notice na whenever people or students na were asked na creating a signature beverage coffee, they normally mix milk, coffee, sugar, chocolate, and then that's it. So what I want is for people to be comfortable on taking risks because you never learn if you don't take risks and stay in that safe spot. You learn when you take risks and the results of that risk. The risk can pay off, sometimes it fails. But that's what experiments do it. You learn from your mistakes and then do better on the next one. So in my mixing glass, I'll be putting first some ice. So next is I'll be doing my espresso shots first. So again, so today I'll be making an espresso based drink. So the coffee I chose is from the Bathala series, Meet the Farmers, because I want to give more of the refreshing feeling of this coffee. Because this coffee is already very indulgent in itself, and I really want to increase that experience. Okay, so where are you? Yeah. Okay. So for my recipe for my espresso is I'm brewing 15 grams of my coffee and then extracting 30 grams out. Because what I experienced about this recipe is what I felt na became balanced. Like not only the bitterness and acidity but also with the sweetness. This is a win-win experience if you lose. Actually, it's true. A risk is a win-win experience. Actually, it's true. Sometimes risk can result a very satisfying feeling, but sometimes it's not. Parang the reason of taking risk is for you to learn more.
Joanne says, learned a lot, thank you.
You're welcome. You're always welcome. Okay. So my first recipe is an espresso shot. So this is going to be the base of my signature drink. Now next is 60 ml of tea. So this tea is actually part of my menu called rose quartz because of its appearance and color, which is actually pink but it's freshly brewed. And then for the taste of it is very refreshing and then fruity. Now this increases the flavors of the grapes that I experience with this coffee when it's cold. So now my next ingredient is 30 ml of simple syrup. So it's easy to make simple syrup. All you need is sugar and then just put water. And then lastly, one of my favorite things to drink is actually kombucha. So this is an orange kombucha that I whipped up 2 weeks and 3 days ago. Now this gives an acidity and that fizzy mouthfeel with the drink. So all you have to do is stir. Okay. Oops, sorry about that. So the look may be simple, but whenever I make a signature drink, I normally focus more on. Excuse me. So normally when I make my signature drink, I normally focus more on flavors because at the end of the day, diba, the drink may look nice on the outside, pero pag tinikim mo, parang ang pait, ang tamis, yung tipong parang ayaw mo na inumin, parang it's a loss din. So that's why normally I focus more on flavors. Yung tipong yung parang nanonood ka ng anime, tapos yung magre-react ka lang sa sobrang sarap, parang yun yung gusto kong ma-achieve. Okay, let's give it a taste. Wow. So this actually gives a candied orange parang flavor from the start because of the kombucha and the espresso. And then with a simple syrup. Now let's give it another go. Then gives more of a tamarind flavor because of the tea and the kombucha. And then after that comes in raisin and with a sweet grape finish. So overall, this is a refreshing drink that you can drink in a hot summer afternoon. So that's my signature drink. Although I don't have a name for it yet, but I can think of one for the next coming videos. Okay.
Okay. Ilang years na yung Barista Express mo, sir?
So, I bought this 2017, so 3 to 4 years.
Okay. Sir, where are you from?
I'm from the Philippines.
Okay.
My name is Gian, 21 years of age, from the Philippines.
Anyways.
So,
That's his spiel whenever he does compete. For next week's topic.
So for next week's topics, since we've learned about sensory, I really want to teach more people about how flavors can affect the coffee. So for next week, we'll focus more on doing signature beverages with different kinds of coffees. So we'll learn how this coffee would affect by using this type of ingredient and this coffee using with this type of ingredient and so on. So remember, always, when you're making a signature beverage, make sure to be creative as possible because anyone can just make a drink and then call it their signature. So always have fun and always try to be more unorthodox. So I really want to thank all of you guys here today for attending my live coffee appreciation event. I hope you enjoyed and learned something from my live event. So once again, my name is Giancarlo.
See you.
See you next week.